We've got a great attendance today, so just thank you to everyone who's taken the time to listen in here today. I'm joined by my colleague Gareth Garlick, who's our VP Technical Services, and we'll run you through just an update on Fortune Bay, where we're at today. If you do have any questions that come up during the webinar, please just type those into the chat box and we'll definitely get those answered for you afterwards. So, Fortune Bay, we focused on developing Saskatchewan's next gold mine, and we've had a really tremendous winter season. Exploration drilling, PFS level studies are advancing, continuing on the permitting side and engagement with communities. So we look forward to running you through all that. We will be making some forward-looking statements. If you do want to read those in more detail, they are available on our website and also our corporate presentation. So focused on Goldfields, where we're developing Saskatchewan's next gold mine. Really excited about that and all the support we're getting to move this project forward. For those who are not that familiar with it, we're in a top-ranked jurisdiction being Saskatchewan. The project has exceptional economics, a de-risked pathway to construction, and tremendous growth potential that we've seen, from our initial round of exploration across a few targets during the winter season. Goldfields is a uniquely de-risked development platform. It's an historical producer. We saw in that first slide that old head frame at the Box deposit. There's been 60,000 ounces produced there just prior to World War II. So it is a past producing asset. The area we're in is Uranium City area. It's had a lot of uranium mining too during the 50s and 60s, around 70 million pounds produced. So it's an area that's seen a lot of mines. It's seen a lot of mines built, operated successfully, closed down as well. The most recent work there is the remediation work on some of those uranium mines. So the area is still active. It's got civil contractors in the area busy with that rehabilitation. And obviously, communities wondering what's the next development for that area. And we've really had a lot of support reaching out to communities in terms of getting Goldfields going again as a mine development. The infrastructure's in place because of all that historical mining that's happened. There's a road to site from Uranium City. It's a government-maintained gravel road. There's a big airport at Uranium City. The civil contractors and the town of Uranium City itself, a long history there of mining. The project has a approved EIS that's from 2008. It's an environmental impact statement. There's provincially approved for an open pit mine at the Box deposit and a 5,000 ton per day mill. And it's a huge positive precedent for moving this project forward. The community relationships are well established since reactivating the project. And the company in 2020, we've built some really good relationships with the communities, and those are ongoing. And we do have an exploration agreement from 2022 where we currently operating under in terms of our exploration as well as the development work that's happening at Goldfields. And obviously Saskatchewan, just a fantastic jurisdiction to be working in. To just recap on the project itself as a development, it's a really simple project, and that's a huge plus, for us. The resources are robust. We have around 1.2 million ounces, of which 1 million ounces is in the indicated category. When we reconcile that resource estimate to the historical production, it reconciles to within 1%, and that's really your ultimate check on a resource is what actually came out the ground. So we really confident in what we have there in terms of resources. And furthermore, in our PEA mine plan, 97% of those resources are in the indicated category, which is hugely important. Projects that are normally at a PEA stage, they're often in inferred category, and then a lot of drilling is needed, sometimes 3 to 4 times as much drilling to move from inferred to indicated. And that's a lot of time, a lot of money. We have indicated already. So at a PFS level, we can move those indicated resources straight into probable reserves at the PFS level. So a huge plus to have a robust and confident resource estimate. The mine plan itself is conventional. It's an open pit operation. We're dealing with very competent, Canadian shield rocks here, basement rocks. No, issues envisaged from all the historical work, and we confirming that through some additional studies, which Gareth will talk to. A 3-to-1 strip ratio, it's certainly the best open pit strip ratio I've seen in Canada. A 1.2 gram a ton mill head grade. That's among the highest grade for open pit development in the Americas, and are just under 1 million ounce of payable coming from the PEA mine plan. The processing also is very simple. We're dealing with free gold, gold sitting in veins. There's a little bit of pyrite, which is a sulfide mineral, and some of the gold sits around the pyrite, not in the pyrite. And the pyrite content itself is very low, only 0.2, 0.3%. We have almost no deleterious elements to speak of. So that lends itself to a very conventional standard milling flow sheet. We will use gravity and a leach carbon in pulp process. It's a standard. You'll see that across numerous gold mines to produce a really excellent recovery of 95 odd percent, which we think we can improve through some additional metallurgical work that is planned. And why are we advancing the project? The economics are exceptional for a project like this. We ran the base case for that updated PEA in late September last year at $2,600 an ounce gold, and produced an after-tax NPV of $610 million and a 44% IRR. As we move up to higher gold prices, the project shows a nice sensitivity to gold price. And for every $100 change in gold price, we get an additional $61 million in after-tax NPV. Looking at the spot case at the time of publishing that updated PEA, which was $36.50 an ounce gold, the project produced an after-tax NPV of $1.25 billion and an after-tax I of 74%. So certainly robust across a range of gold prices, and really speaks to the case for advancing this forward as a development. The capex is modest at $300 million. It's obviously leveraging off that existing infrastructure in the area, and that capex estimate includes a $51 million contingency. The all-in sustaining costs are competitive, and a key metric for the study was the throughput, which is just sub 5,000 ton per day at 4,950. The project can produce better economics at higher throughputs, but we've specifically scoped this project to below the federal permitting threshold, which is 5,000 ton per day. So we're aiming to keep all the permitting in province, leveraging off that existing EIS, and it allows for our plan to move the project forward quickly and in an executable fashion without just putting up high numbers due to a higher throughput. So we have a clear expedited path to production as we move this forward, keeping the permitting in province, building upon that existing and valid 2008 EIS. What the government will want to see, even though that is still valid today, they will ask the question, has anything changed in the baseline conditions since 2008? And we've already done the work to validate a lot of the historical data sets and address that time lapse since 2008 to show conditions are much the same. We're also proposing a larger project than what was originally permitted, and that includes the mining of the Athona deposit and a larger TSF, which allows for that flow sheet, the envisaged flow sheet, which produces that higher gold recovery of 95%. The additional permitting is underway. We've done work last year, and there's still data being collected on the project today. And we'll look forward to additional studies to tie off the additional assessment needed around the envisaged expansions. The community relationships are well developed, as I mentioned, and we are now engaging with communities around a mine development with discussions toward impact benefit agreements. The project has terrific growth potential, and we did a winter drilling campaign to start to identify areas where we can most efficiently expand resources on the project. And we've had a tremendous set of exploration results come back from our winter drilling program, which we've news released. And I'll hand over to Gareth just to talk through that a little bit.
Yeah, thanks, Dale. Hi, everyone. So just as a refresher with this overview slide, it's a location map of goldfields. For those not familiar, our targets for winter exploration and resource growth were firstly box deep, so big gaps in drill coverage directly down dip and along structural trends from the main resource. Then Athona, specifically the West Mine granite, which is shown in blue in the figure, which we know is mineralized but has very poor drill coverage. It actually overlies an extension of the Athona mine granite, and it falls within the actual open pit planned by the 2025 PEA, but it doesn't have any resources estimated in it yet, so that's a clear target. Golden Pond up in the north, there was some very compelling historical intercepts there that needed follow-up. Frontier, where there's a mine granite, visually similar to Box, albeit a bit smaller, with untested deeper extents, and then Triangle, where there are mineralized quartz veins that haven't been properly tested down dip. So if we're jumping onto the next slide here, we're going to show a summary of the first set of results from Box. In total, we drilled 5 longer holes for 2,500 meters. So this slide shows the first 3 holes with highlight intercepts on the right-hand side of the slide there. So these are holes 346, 347, and 348. Again, they were targeting big gaps in coverage down dip. The results were consistent with the larger surrounding body of results. We keep getting good grade intercepts at depth, again showing this pervasive mineralizing system in the Goldfield syncline. And these new intercepts just keep adding to a growing inventory of encouraging results at depth that could be targeted with additional delineation drilling to add mineral resources as potential underground mining targets. Jumping onto the next slide, after those first 3 holes, we drilled 2 even bigger step outs significantly down dip along high-grade structural trends. There's a lot of info in our news releases, good mineralized intercepts in both holes. But we thought here we'd highlight the results from hole 350. It has a great intercept with 10 grams a ton over 7 meters, and that's located 140 meters outside of the current mineral resource estimate, directly downtrend from high-grade intercepts in our previously identified zone A. So again, lots of potential well outside of the current mineral resource estimate. Jumping onto the next slide, we'll talk a bit about results from Golden Pond. It's kind of difficult to illustrate with 2-dimensional static images, so bear with us here. But what we're trying to show is that there was a cluster of holes with historical drill results that showed a mineralization orientation towards the northwest that was never actually properly followed up on. So because there's always a bit of uncertainty with historical results, we drilled a series of close-spaced fences to locate and then try to extend the mineralization, which we did. All 7 holes intersected anomalous gold. And we can show that the trend we targeted does actually extend to the northwest. We tested up to 50 meters from the original occurrences, and it's still wide open. Yeah, we're going to be looking at doing some helicopter-based follow-up into terrain beyond that for summer. But yeah, we ran up against the wall of what we could do there in winter. So I'll hand back over to Dale now to talk about project development.
Yeah, we put out some news this morning just to bring shareholders and the market up to date with the work that's been doing on the project development side at Goldfields. We're doing PFS level studies toward a PFS, and that the work is really focused on de-risking that the updated PEA from 2025. Confirming some of those technical assumptions and also evaluating some optimization opportunities. We obviously have a really robust project here. And the work underway is really to start gearing up toward actually doing the formal PFS study and addressing some of those key data gaps. And I think Gareth's best placed to just talk through some of those key work programs underway.
Yeah, sure. A lot to talk about here. On the geotechnical side, we just wrapped up a 4-hole, 730-meter drill program at Box. So that was planned out and overseen by Orsenko, who of course did our 2025 PEA, so they were very well positioned for that. The program was designed to complement and expand upon the extensive historical data set at Box, and it included all of the required geotechnical logging, sampling for physical property testing, packet testing for hydrogeological investigations, and piezometer installation for ongoing hydrogeological monitoring. So that project's done. We're waiting on lab results, and we'll get the Athona geotechnical drilling underway in summer. We stood down on the drilling for the shoulder melt season up there, which is happening right now. Moving on to one of the bigger project data gaps that we have at Goldfields, it's the waste rock geochemistry side of things. We have very limited historical data to plan around, and it's from the late 1990s. So we did a waste sampling program based on modern best practices late last year, and we've just gotten the results back for that. We collected representative composite samples from the different waste rock lithologies at Box and Athona. And the results further confirmed that the waste rocks within the mine plan of the 2025 PEA are the majority either non-acid generating, or a couple of them fall into the marginal, they call it PAG, potentially acid generating category, and they're not going to leach any kind of problematic metal. So overall, we're looking at a very benign waste rock profile. We've started collecting a larger, more spatially representative suite of samples from Box. That's almost complete, and we'll do the same for Athona. So when that's done, we can commission a full waste rock categorization study going forward to support a pre-feas and our permitting related work. Moving on to project optimization, what we're referring to here is a trade-off study that we've commissioned exploring an alternative production scenario for goldfields that was identified in our 2025 PEA. So to be clear, we're very focused on our PEA case scenario, but of course it would be pretty remiss to not look at other options to improve the project. So we did collect a metallurgical sample from Box last year, and we had that processed at SGS Lakefield to explore the option of generating a pyrite gold concentrate on site for export and sale. So not actually recovering a doré product on site, just generating a concentrate and then exporting that for sale. So that carries some significant potential advantages in CapEx saving and simplifying the on-site process, but it also carries logistical challenges. So we've commissioned Ausenco to carry out a full trade-off study using the results of the network that we've just received. And the results support and actually improve the observations that we made from previous work. They show that it's possible to recover from Box. It's possible to recover over 90% of the gold into less than 1% of the head feed mass by a combination of just standard gravity circuit and a Nelson-Moseley circuit and flotation. So that's pretty compelling, and we're looking forward to getting the results of this trade-off study probably in summer to help finalize our exact pre-feas scenario. So while we're waiting for the results of the trade-off, we know that whichever way we go on our production scenario, we're going to need more metallurgical work, specifically addressing spatial representation and variability testing. So we are busy collecting metallurgical samples from Box, and we'll move on to Athona next so that we have the material collected and all ready for export and testing as soon as that scope is decided on. And one thing again to note here is that for this metallurgical sampling, as for the waste rock sampling, we're getting everything we need from existing drill core. So either from newly drilled geotech holes or from existing core stored in our core yard in Uranium City. So we're not having to do any dedicated drilling for this, which is another huge time and cost saving for the project. I'll hand back to Dale here.
Yeah, thanks, Gareth. On the environmental regulatory and community side, work's progressing. We've continued with the baseline monitoring program, so we continue to verify and expand those project data sets. We've also got expressions of interest for summer work. We've identified some of the key studies that would need to happen later this year and busy collecting proposals for that. We have engaged with the Saskatchewan regulators. We had a meeting with them in Q1, and tremendous amount of support from the Saskatchewan government. There's a strong desire to expand their mineral economy beyond uranium and potash, and would love to see a new gold mine developed there. So they're a keen interest in the project, the history of the project, and where we're looking to take it. What we will be doing is, following the project optimization work, is actually submit a project change review, which would look at that older EIS, and the government would then advise on changes needed to amend that existing permit according to the development plan for the project. And then the community work has been ongoing with engagement in numerous areas. The one would be land use studies to be done this year. Also a process agreements to work toward impact benefit agreements, and then also planning community meetings for later in the year to get input on the exact design of the projects once some of these additional studies have been completed. So just switching gears away from goldfields, and just to bring everyone up to date with what's happening at Pomarosa. It's obviously a key asset for us in our pipeline, and we are looking to get work started there again. For those not familiar with the asset, it's in a really phenomenal geological setting that parallels a lot of these giant porphyry systems worldwide. Exploration to date has been primarily shallow drilling in the lithocap zone, where there's epithermal systems, and there's a huge amount of near-surface gold resource potential there. We have the historical Campamento resource, around 1.7 million ounces, across the categories. That's at a 0.5 gram a ton cutoff. At a 0.3 gram a ton cutoff, that's around 2 million ounces of gold. There's also the Cerro prospect, a shallow prospect that was drilled, where there's enough drilling to support a maiden resource estimate that was never done, but we have at an independent QP verify that there's sufficient drilling to support that. Just some verification needed of the core, which is available to be done. So that would form the initial resource base for the project, and then numerous shallow gold targets across various zones that we'd like to test. Multi-million ounce potential we see in that shallow lithocap zone. And below that lithocap, where there's this huge porphyry system that's evident that needs to be explored. We know there's copper in the system. We have some exceptional holes in the project pointing to that copper potential, 0.9% copper equivalent over 600 meters in one hole. That's 0.3% copper, and 2.1% copper equivalent over 67 meters. That's a 1.1% copper over that width, both starting from surface and ending in mineralization. So really excited to get work started there. The project, there's no royalties, encumbrances, 100% owned. We are dealing with a process there with the state government. We announced late last year that the state government had declared they were declaring protected areas in the state. One of those fell over a portion of our concession. It's only 11% of the concession area, but does impact on part of our resource and some of our key target areas. So we're looking to resolve this before we get work started on the project. There's two pathways we're pursuing there very actively. The one is engaging directly with the state government to address these areas and have them relocated. We've had numerous constructive and productive meetings with various levels in state government and both legal and amongst the political leadership there. And that process is continuing with further meetings planned and a strategy in place to work with government to get that resolved. Outside of that, there also is a legal pathway that's progressing. We did announce that we had submitted an amparo, which is a constitutional challenge under the Mexican legal framework, and that's really to protect our federally granted mineral rights. So that process is advancing. We're at a stage now where we're having experts, independent experts, verify the areas of overlap. That's likely to also include a field visit. There's been continuous documentation back and forth, and we're expecting a court hearing date to be announced shortly, which may happen in the next month or two, and we'll certainly keep everyone updated on any material developments. We also do have uranium projects, as many people know. We've got a tremendous set of, a total of 7 projects across that northern rim of the Athabasca Basin, where there's just fantastic geology for the discovery of these high-grade basement-hosted deposits that are related to the Athabasca Basin. These are projects we've generated through staking, and we've elected, obviously, not to fund those ourselves, rather focus on our gold assets, but allow partners to pursue exploration on those while we can retain, upside in those projects. On the Strike and Mermac projects, which are near the Goldfields project, there was an option agreement initially with Aero Energy. They've done a 3-way merger, now Manhattan Uranium Discovery Corp, and they can earn a 70% interest for $6 million spend. They're pretty close to their 51% ownership by spending $3 million. And we'll see, they've raised flow through to do a significant program this year. There's numerous targets across both Mermac and Strike. A lot of the more recent work has focused at Mermac. We are planning to go back to Strike as well this summer. We've got over 40 kilometers of prospective graphitic conductors on these projects, and where we've had numerous intersections before, definitely fertile corridors that warrant more drilling, and exciting set of targets, and also some follow-up concepts to be chased during the summer. We're busy workshopping that at the moment to define a final set of targets, and as soon as that's defined, we'll make an announcement, and obviously looking to commence a drilling program early in summer, which we believe will be significant in size. With the Woods projects, that's a collection of 5 projects. We've done an option agreement with New Horizons. They are still private, but soon to IPO, planned for the end of June on the ASX. and it's going to see money come in to fund drilling on those projects. We do have a earlier round of target verification planned there for early June. We flew VTEM magnetics and radiometrics over the spruce, pine, and aspen blocks last year, and from that we've generated 20 really exciting targets or target areas from that, which we'll verify starting early June, and then plan out a drilling program for later in the summer. So really excited to see this work going on. We do generate revenues from these projects. It's going to help top up our cash. We have around 5 million cash at the moment, so we'll see revenues come through option or operator fees. So we get 10% of the exploration expenditures on these projects, as well as, we have infrastructure and equipment in the area which we rent out. So it's a meaningful revenue for the company, which is all non-dilutive, and at the same time, obviously keeping upside in potential discovery across, some really exciting targets that will be tested through the summer months. So just bringing the story, back to center here, and really focused on our gold, which is, flagship. Our flagship is the Goldfields project, and obviously still an exciting time in the gold market. We've seen, gold starting to settle down at $4,500 an ounce, but the outlook, certainly amongst the major institutions, still looks really positive. And, noting that this gold price is significantly above our PEA base case for the Goldfields project. Work in Saskatchewan has been great, and certainly, on a first-hand basis, dealing with regulators now in terms of moving that forward along a very clear permitting pathway. A high confidence resource at Goldfields, with that growth potential that Gareth's pointed to, the compelling project economics, and that clear development pathway, we really feel Goldfields is going to become Saskatchewan's next gold mine. And it's a matter of, in a disciplined fashion, going through these next key steps of de-risking the asset and working toward a PFS, which we expect to be a significant milestone, for the project and the company. The company is still in great shape with our, 5 million in cash and those revenues that will come in through uranium projects. Still only 70 million shares outstanding. You won't find a low share count amongst our peers in the developer space. Our strong insider ownership, and we continue to be very disciplined and smart how we're spending our money and moving things forward. And then obviously just a lot of upside still through our uranium and reactivation of the Pomarosa project. So thanks everyone for listening in. I'll check here if there are any questions. A question here: can we expect to see more drilling at Goldfields this summer? Yes, that's certainly planned. We're looking to later in the summer get to, obviously on the geotech side, as Gareth mentioned, some of the Athona drilling. But very excited, to be planning out some follow-up exploration now that we have some results in from the winter campaign. Obviously, some really nice high grades down dip at Box, which we are, assessing in terms of our models. And also all the orientated drill core we have, looking at the structural setting for those intersections, and then as well as Golden Pond and the additional targets that weren't tested this summer, including Triangle and Athona. So I think that's it. I'd like to thank everyone for joining. This webinar has been recorded, so will be made available on our website if anyone wants to pass that along. And we look forward to staying in touch. And please reach out if you have any questions. You can book a chat through our website, or feel free to call the company through the numbers provided there. Thanks very much.